Hey, it's Mack with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and today is Wednesday. It's October the 16th. This will be our chart lesson for today. Before I get into the chart lesson, I will start. Well, let's just start out here. You can see there's a clear up channel here, and we got a break, a new high, and then we've kind of been correcting ever since. So we're in this. Um, I'd call this a range that averages probably about 6 points maybe or so there. I'm backed way out, so it looks kind of small, but that's about 6 points there. So there's enough room, to draw your lines and scalp out. I don't have this line on here. I'm going to put it on real quick before I forget about it. Um, Sometimes people have a hard time drawing these lines. That's one of the things I'm going to talk about because I discovered something today. It's kind of interesting, but you can see that channel fits nicely right there, and then you get the break and you tried to retest the top and then it turns down. And you can see this channel coming down here. You can see that prices fit nicely in there, and then you get a little break and it pulls back and it takes off. And I'll show this a little closer in a minute, but a couple of things I want to, a couple of housekeeping type things that I want to go over first. And one of the things I had, I showed the chart yesterday and I talked about the signal bar and how we enter on a stop, one tick below the signal bar for going short or one tick above. And I basically said that these people were that I showed the example of the chart yesterday were entering some other way. I still don't know exactly how they entered, and but I think the problem was they weren't using the entry technique properly, or at least that's one of the problems they were having. And I got an email from somebody else, and they said, "Hey, I think you were a little too hard on them because, that's not in your manual. You never made it clear." Well, immediately I'm thinking, well, I hope it's in the manual because that's one of the important things. It's got to be in the manual, but I'm gonna go check to be sure because I'm human. I make mistakes, and so I went to check, and of course it's there, and I forwarded it to them. I hadn't heard back from them yet. So for whatever reason, they missed it. But the point I'm making is not to say, hey, you were wrong and I'm right, or hey, you should have known this and you didn't. The reason I bring this up is because it just brings home a point to me is what will happen is people will read the manual through, and they might even read it through twice, and then they put it aside and they think they know everything. And the point I'm trying to make is that manual is not something just to be read. It's a study guide. You should read that thing over and over and over because I promise you, every time you go back and read it, you will pick up another nugget. There's too much information in those 80 or 85 pages, I forget, is somewhere around that amount, but there's just too much information in there for even someone with a very high IQ that's very good reading comprehension to pick it all up. Um, every time you read it, you will likely learn something new and pick up another little nugget. So I encourage you, if you're not already doing so, use that thing like a study guide, not as something you read, a book you read and set aside. Use it as a study guide. Go back. Anytime you got some spare time, go back and read it. Read it by sections. Just start at the beginning and pick out a section and read it. Then pick it up and read the next section and do that and go through it as many times as you can. Even when you're starting to get it, as you start to pick up one little piece, that might be what really helps you pick up the second piece. So even once you start to get it, I encourage you to keep reading it because there's just too much. There's just too much to comprehend in there. I'll get questions. People send me an email that when they're interested in the manual, and they go, "How many pages are it?" And I know why they ask that because they want to see if there's any substance to it. They think if it's got 100 pages versus 10 pages, it's going to be more valuable. Something it's not. It is what it is. And it's somewhere around 80 pages, and it's all good stuff, and you can't learn it reading it even once or twice. You need to pick it up and read it over and over, and I promise you, it'll be to your benefit to do that. It won't be a waste of your time. And so that's the only reason I bring this whole subject back up is because it just made me think about that. Because I wrote the manual. I know what's in there. I wrote it with, myself. So And I still pick it up and read through it from time to time just to go back to make sure there's not something I'm missing, to see if there's something we need to add, or to see if there's something I want to adjust a little bit or something. And every time I read it, it just, it reinforces to me that, hey, it's all there already. And maybe some of it I can reword a little different, and I've worked on some things like that. There's really no updates to the manual at this point, but there's some little odds and ends that I've worked on to reword slightly just to make it a little clearer or whatever. And at some point I'll probably throw that out there, and when I do, anybody that's already bought the manual can get a free copy of the updated one. I promise that, and I'll stick to that promise. So, but again, I bring this up just to say that you can't read the manual once because you'll miss something. And I know that to be true because both of these people missed this. And this guy that sent me the email, he went back searching for it and couldn't find it. So, but it's there. I assure you it's there because I found it real quickly by going back because, of course, I know where everything's at because I wrote the manual. But it's there, and it's important that you understand. As an example, let's just go over this real quickly. If I'm looking to go short, and this is my signal bar, I enter on a stop. I wait for this signal bar to complete. I don't try to enter early. I don't try to sneak in. I wait for this bar to complete, and then I enter a stop order one tick below it. And if that stop order gets triggered, my order gets executed, and look, that was an easy scalp. If I'm looking to go long, let's say this was my signal bar and I was looking to go long, I would enter on a stop order, a buy stop order, one tick above that bar as soon as it completed it, and when it ticked forward, it would have filled my order, and that one would have backed up on me and probably been a loser. But I'm not saying that's a good signal bar, but I'm just using it as an example. On this particular trade, this would have been your signal bar, but it's a terrible signal bar. But you would have considered entering on this bar, which one tick below it, and look at it, how bearish it is. It opened up here and closed all the way on its low. As soon as it closed, I'd put my sell stop order right there and would have triggered it and taken me straight down to the low of this little trading range and been an easy trade. And so that's how we enter. And so I want to make sure that's clear. So there's no mistakes, but again, go back, read the manual, use it as a study guide. Don't just pick it up and read it from time. Don't just pick it up and read it once or maybe even twice and then put it aside, because I guarantee you're going to miss so much stuff. There's just too much in there to comprehend and pick up in one reading unless you're already pretty good at reading the price action. You're just looking for a refresher that might add some new tips to you. Otherwise, even then, I guarantee you can read it a few times and pick up something different. And I'll put it to you like this. Have you ever seen a movie and you watch that movie, and at the end of the movie you understood the movie, you knew the storyline, you remember the parts to it, and then maybe a month later it comes out on video, you went to the theater to see it the first time or whatever, and it was just a movie you liked, and you watch it a second time, and then the second time it's like, wow, I don't remember this happening the first time, or you pick up some other pieces because you're watching it a second time. Reading the trading manual is the same way. If you've ever had that experience with watching a movie or whatever, and me, if you follow me anytime, I always like to throw out examples in my teachings that can help you to understand what I'm trying to get across. And that movie one comes to my mind because I've done that before. I go to see a movie, I watch it, it's a great movie, I like it, and I say, I got to watch that again when it comes out on video, or I got to watch that again. I'm going to rent this again next and later and watch it again, and then I watch it again and I pick up something that I completely missed the first time. And it's just the human mind can't comprehend and pick up everything each time, and it's going to be the same way reading the manual. But the other thing I wanted to show you, I'm always talking about starting usually your trend starts off the first two swings of the overnight. And if you'd have done that here, your trend line would have probably went right across there. And that may not have necessarily been wrong. You might have still gotten this angle. But yesterday, my trend line started off these two swings. And the way I got that was by drawing it off the lows here. And then I just drug it up. And it fit off these two swings. But coming off these two swings, it looked it basically, I had this same channel right here, but this is another gentleman's chart he sent me, and if you drew your trend line off of these two swings, look at the difference in that trend line. I can't account for that, but let me show you my chart now. This is the same stuff. Here's my chart from yesterday, and look where my two swings were. And yet you can see well, I can't get them both on there at the same time and make them the right size. Yeah, maybe we can. Let's try this here. But you can see those two. You can see this is my chart and this is his chart. And look where my two swings are. They're right off those first two. But look what happens when he draws them off his first two. But look, when he gets the channel right, he still gets the same channel as me. He just gets it a different way. And I can't explain that other than maybe the data provider or that he's using is slightly different than mine, or I just can't account for it. I don't know why there's a difference. But in the end, we can both get the same channel, as you can see there. So I'm going to change, I'm going to stop saying you get it off the first two swings, and maybe that's why some people have a hard time finding these channels, but for whatever reason, you want your channel to fit. Look how that fits down through there. Notice how you got a little bit above it right here, but that's not uncommon in the overnight to get these little overshoots during the overnight because it's more volatile because of less volume. But notice how that channel fits his price action very nicely. And notice how it fits very nicely on mine. But the way I got mine was drawing it right here off these first two lows, few swings low first, and then drug it up, and that's where it fit the best. And I originally had it touching here, but later on I adjusted a little bit because you can see it was getting a little bit higher, so I adjusted a little bit. But I just wanted to point that out to people so you can see the idea is to find this channel. Just like, and you can see it's there on both charts. It comes up a little short, and then it comes up short again. Look, it comes up a little short, comes up short again, and the reason being is that it shows you it's losing momentum, and then it turns. When it starts to getting to the point, and there's probably a median line down through there, and it's bouncing off that median line is likely the cause of that. So I didn't even look at that, but I'm sure that's part of it. But I just wanted to point that out to show you, don't worry about how you get there. Just make sure that your lines are holding prices. And when I say that, you don't want to see where it touches it once or twice or, here and there, and then there's a big gap or a big overshoot. You can see that is holding prices. That channel is holding prices nicely. There's no arguing that. You got a little bit of an overshoot here, and then guess what? It overshot it on the other side a little bit on his chart, and that's generally what you'll see. There's no overshoot on mine, and you can see that. Maybe the stems are sticking up, and you got a little stem sticking through here and one sticking through there. And so I hope that's clear to you. Rather than telling you that, you should always start off the first two swings, generally that's how I find mine. But sometimes they're harder to find that way, and I'll go some other direction to find it. I'll get it off the tops, or I'll get it off, if we're going up, I may have to find it off the highs and drag it down. And sometimes it's real easy to find it off the lows, but just find the one that fits nicely. Look at that little channel right there. Notice how well it holds prices. Look at this one coming down. It's holding prices nicely. You get a break, a little retest, and then it's going the other way. Then you got this channel right here. It's holding prices pretty nicely. You get a little break, a retest, and then boom. And then this one's coming down. You get a little break there, and it tries to retest a couple of times those dojis, and then it takes off. Look at this one. This one way overshot, and then it comes up, overshoots, comes back, tries the retest, and then it goes higher again. Look at this one. You're all inside, then it breaks, makes a new low, and there it goes. And I guarantee you there's a little, I don't have it on here, but there's going to be one right up through here as well somewhere. just play with it until you get it to fit right. I'm guessing that's probably this one just had an overshoot right there. And you can see that line holding prices, and then we get a little break and then a retest with a new high. And sometimes they're easier to find than other ones. That one's not so clear right there. Um, but if I played around with it a few times, I probably could find something else that may fit better. And you don't always have to have it perfectly. It may be like that right there. It's maybe more like a spiking channel. Yeah, maybe like that. I don't know, but just play around with it. Like I said, sometimes they're clearer than others, but most of the time there's a really clear channel, and you can see the break there and the little retest, and then look at this one going up, the little break, the retest, and that's one thing about short-term ones that they, on the retest, sometimes it'll just retest the trend line, or it can't get back up there. It's not as common to see a new high or new low, even though you will see those. It's just not as common. So we're about 17 minutes into this lesson, but these were all good things that I felt like were worth mentioning. And at this point, we hadn't talked about the first trade. So there's quite a few today. This is a really good trend going up. And, we got the break here, a new high, and we've been correcting ever since. And will we trend lower? I don't know. Right now, we're just in a trading range, and it's kind of worked a little lower here. You can see that. But it's still a trading range. So, but let's back up, talk about the trades I saw today, and we'll wrap this thing up because we're almost 20 minutes in and we haven't even talked about today's. But that was all important stuff that I felt like was interesting or worth talking about. And again, going back to the email I got, I hope I didn't sound like I was being tough on the couple yesterday about their chart. It was just I just wanted to make sure everybody understood how important it was that you use the entry rules properly. And if it came across that I was being a little tough on them or rude, that wasn't my intention, so I apologize. I hope that I didn't come across that way to everybody, but if I did, I certainly apologize because I didn't mean it to be that way. I just wanted them to understand that, hey, you got to make sure you're following the rules or you're going to have trouble right out of the gate. And then I got concerned that, hey, is it really not in the manual? But it's there. If you read it, you'll see it, and it's there. So, but let's talk about the trades and move on. I'll try to move through these a little quicker probably than normal. So I apologize, but we're 20 minutes into this thing, and I've gotten nothing done other than talk about some important things. But if you were trading by 7 this morning, this was the first real setup I saw. We're in congestion here. It's really a down sloping trend channel there, and you get the break here, a retest, and you've got these lows. All it is you're finding it's pulled back here, and they're trying to go lower, but they're just finding really strong support. You got the low, you tested it once, you tested it twice. If you saw the channel, you got the breakout, the retest. Look at that nice bullish bar there. You could enter that with a stop because there's a good bit of room back to here and to here, and that turned out to be that's just a perfect reversal bar. So your entry's one tick on a stop order, one tick above that, easy scalp, and then you get a little two-legged pull back. I drew this one in green because these are all dojis and there's a lot of overlap here. We're not really back to the trend line. It's a little bit aggressive, but it does bounce off the EMA, and you figure you got one leg here, and there's a good chance we may go test this. So if you took that trade, it's a second entry long, it's two legs back to the EMA, prices are bouncing off the EMA, not strongly, but it's how everything closed high, and there's only stems down here. So if you saw that trade, it worked no matter whether you entered above this bar or the next one. And so I marked it, but I marked this one in lavender because somebody sent me a question about it. They had their trend line drawn like this, and they said there was a bounce off the trend line and a reversal bar, and it failed, and they were wondering why it failed. Well, if I draw my trend line like that, I still get a break right there, and then a the retest, and then you kind of sell off. So um, notice how I drew that right up through there. It catches those lows right across there, and then you get a break and then a retest. But that's a first entry. There's, even if you don't have this here, I just put that there to demonstrate it. Even if you don't have that, you can see it looks a little better there now, but still you got this, you're finding a resistance, and at that point I think I had this drawn up there like so, and but even there, you're finding resistance up there, and you're so close. You got to have room to scalp out here before you get to this high. There's no room there. That's a nice bullish looking bar, but notice how it's just an inside bar. A better trade would have broke above that, and you got to be figuring we need to come back to this trend line because you found the resistance that we see at that point, and so it's not a really good entry. It is a breakout pullback long, but this should have gone a little bit further than this, really, and you should have, to give you more room to get out, in my opinion, before I would want to enter there. And that's why first entries are suspect. And on a really strong trend, you might take a first entry, but this is not a really strong trend. We haven't broken above the overnight high. We moved up pretty good there, and then this one didn't go so high on the pullback. And see, notice how far this went. Here's a good example. Look what happened when prices broke above there. They went way up there before they were corrected. That's a good sign, and when it doesn't go so high like right here, it doesn't mean it's not going to go higher, but you can see it's not taking off like it was before. So just keep that in mind. But I want to talk about that one and tell you the reasons why I didn't think it was a very good entry. It's a first entry. There's not much room to get out. If you drew your short-term trend line, there was a break and a retest. We weren't back to the trend line. Just a lot of different reasons why. And then you get two legs back and a second entry long right down here. Let me get that out of the way. I didn't like entering on this one, although you could have. It would have been a little more aggressive. But generally, now that you're kind of making little moves down, wait on the second entry, which didn't come to there. Notice how you made a new high. You pulled back a little bit. So it gave you a second entry right there. So I liked entering on that bar better than that one. And it took on off there. And, notice even though, and notice too that this is kind of overlap here again, kind of like this one. And notice this little breakout, this kind of broke out and it tried to pull back and test that area right across. If you move that line up, you can kind of see where that pulled back and tested that little area of overlap right there. And that's what happened. So you really could have entered there as well. So that's the reason I circled it like I did. That's kind of like a breakout pullback. The only thing wrong with that one is you're getting really close to here again, but you got the fact that it's the second entry long, and it's, you're coming off this trend line, which is, I always tell people, where do you find the best, where do the moves come from? Off the main trend line. And look at that thing go. This one trade could have made you a bundle today. And it just doesn't get any better than that. It's not a beautiful setup, but if you're reading the price action and you understand what we're doing, there's enough reasons to enter right there. And and there's no looking back. It's going. They got a bunch of shorts trapped. And this is just a breakout pullback from this over here. Let me put the line across there so you can see it. Actually, it couldn't even pull back that far. I guess that's really just I was thinking it was from that over there, but you can kind of see we broke out there and then pulled back and then turned up. So you still got it right there. Notice that bar broke above and then it pulled back and tested it and then turned up. So it's not much of a retest, but it's there. And I guess that is just the median line. People were looking at this as the highs, but when we got on through it, then you had to go to this next one, and you can see that. And this just turned out to kind of be a median line, and I really think it's right there. We got above it and pulled back and tested it, and that's what I'm looking at now. So, but that's why I kind of adjust my lines as the day goes, and then you get up here and you get the little break. You try to go higher. You try to go higher on a second entry. So there was really a long trap right there, but I don't like that. Look at all that overlap. Sure, it worked, but that's seeing it after the fact. I just think that one was really risky right there after a big move like that, because it could have easily went back and retested that high. So, even though there's a failed second entry long, it's really more like overlap right there. It's really congestion. And usually what happens is it snaps back on congestion just like it did, and it tried to go lower again and then trapped everybody and then went higher. And I didn't like entering long in here because we weren't back to this trend line. That's what I was looking at, this main trend line up through here, and we weren't back to it yet. So, I was a little leery about entering in all that. But then we get a failed second entry short. Notice the new low, first entry going higher, failed second entry short. There's really kind of a double bottom that broke lower and trapped people there. Once I saw the second entry short, then I felt good enough to take it, and it didn't go very far, but it was good enough for an easy scalp. And it's with the trend that we have. So, this was a huge move. And generally when you have a move that high, you're going to retest that high and probably make a new high like we did here. And, and then we finally get back to the trend line, but there's not a setup. Look at all that overlap, dojis, and what happens when it breaks above. It snaps back, comes down, and then it breaks out the low side and gives you a chance to get long with the trend after it trapped everybody on both sides. And then it took it a second, but then look at it go, boom. And then there was a second entry there, but again, you got all that overlap right up here at this high. That's dangerous. It's just not a very good entry. But then you get your little breakout pullback long, but guess what else? There's a new low there. Notice how it's lower than that low and lower that low. So you got a new low. You're headed up, pull back, first entry short, headed up, pull back, second entry short. And it's kind of right off that trend line again. So you got a failed second entry short to let you get long. It's a breakout. Again, it's kind of another breakout pullback long. And you can see it was this, here's your high right here at that point. Notice how that bar right there pulled right back and touched that line and then turned up. Again, it was slow and it took a minute, but another scalp, and then now you've got your break of your trend line, 2 legs up to a new high, and now you got to be careful about going long. You get 2 legs back here, 1 leg, and then another leg. There's a couple of swings in the middle there too. A really aggressive trader might have gone long there. You got a second entry long here. It's not a real pretty one, but it is. But I drew that in purple. But we already had the new high, the trend line break, and the new high. So it's just not a very good setup. They're inside bars. It's a doji, and you can see it would have worked. And then it pulls back. But now you get a chance to get a better second entry long off this trend line. If you drew it off those first two, let me move this out of the way. See those first few bars right there? And it pulls back. And so on a bigger picture, that's a second entry long. And now you got a, and again, it's aggressive because we've already had a new high. There's a little bit of overlap there, but it's coming off that trend line if you're drawing your lines, and it would have worked. But I didn't like either one of those trades. I think they're real risky. I was looking for prices to turn over. Actually, I'm going to draw this one in green right here because it's a beautiful reversal bar. There's overlap here and all that, but you didn't really have a trend line break of this yet until here, and but you did have a double top after a trend line break and a new high. So it's really on a bigger picture. That's a second entry short because here's your first entry, pull back, second entry. So aggressive trader probably would have considered going short there. I think it's too risky. You're better off than, guess what, you get the failed second entry long, and look at that reversal. You got your break of your channel now, a retest. This is a second entry coming off that high, and you figure you're probably coming down to test this low, and look where it goes. And then that was it. I didn't see anything else in here that I liked. You might have gone long right here. You might have even gone long here. It's a second entry long off these lows. Usually better off to wait on the second entry, and this one would have given you a pretty good second entry. It's not a really good bar, but look how it worked. But this one is a failed break below those lows right across there, and you can see that. And so that one, I'd give that an aggressive green one too. Um, and I really don't see anything else here I would have been willing to take. So maybe right there. But that was it for today, and we're 32 minutes into this almost. So I hope all that, find these channels. You can clearly see, let me back out of here. I mean, you can see that clearly that channel is holding prices. It's not as clear on top, but you know that didn't turn up and turn down there by accident and then turn down there again the second time. And this might have been a little higher like that, and maybe this was the midpoint. I see that as well. But you still pretty much get to the same place, because during the overnight it's not uncommon to get a lot of some overshoots. Notice it overshot this side, and then you could say now, hey, it overshot this side as well. Down here is probably more equal, and so I even see that going on there as well, and maybe even another line right there, and I guarantee it's the same angle. Yep. So I mean, there's always different ways to see this, but if you get the angle right and you get the channel right, you can find the rest of it. And you don't have to be exactly right. You only have to be close. But I believe that's it, because that gives you all the closes all the way 1, 2, 3, 4. There's about 10 bars touching that line. Then you see it finds resistance there again before it breaks. It gets back inside above it and is headed higher again. And I believe that to be it. I believe that to be the midpoint, because you could see that was holding these prices pretty good right here. And then we broke above it and went to the next level. So you got to find the right angle, and you got to be close. It doesn't have to be exact, but it has to be close. But hopefully what we talked about at the beginning, that you don't always get to because charts are different and the data is different, maybe you don't always get to the same point drawing it the same way. You would think that it would be that way, but what we're learning is it's not. So draw your lines however you have to draw them to where they fit the price action. And again, just to give you an example, let's say you draw it off the first two swings. You can see that prices touched it twice again here, but it didn't hold. You can just see it doesn't fit very well. And you bring it up here, and you get a few touches there, you get a touch there, you might get a few touches there, but it doesn't fit very well. Just play with it until you get the right fit, like I showed you on the first two charts, comparing his chart to mine. They were coming from totally different points, but in the end, you could see we could get the very same channel. And that's the idea behind it. So keep that in mind. I'm going to wrap it up. Hope you had a good trading day. It was another great day. Look how everything from this point forward is pretty much above the EMA until here. Now we're starting to get below the EMA. Now we're on both sides, and what does that tell you? A trading range. And look, you can see the highs and you can see the lows. It's real clear. That's a trading range. So, but as long as prices are mostly above the EMA like that, you know what's going on. You got a trend. And when they mostly get below, you got a downtrend. So keep that in mind. And you don't trade from that alone. It's just a clue to help keep you, to know if the trend's up or the trend's down, to help you find these trend lines and so forth. So, but anyway, this is Mack with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and I'm going to wrap it up, so we'll see you next time.